Perfect. Today we are live on SEO leadership with Emily, Head of SEO at TMWI. We are so excited to have you on today, Emily. Thank you for joining us. And how are you keeping today?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I'm been really looking forward to this. So yeah, it's good to catch up.
Awesome. Emily, we usually like to get started with just a quick question or brief history on your career progression and how you got into SEO, how you ended up at Head of SEO. Could you take us through a little bit of that and what brought you to TMWI?
Yeah, sure. So I started out as a content writer out of university, just looking at journalism, content writing. I did all sorts of things for different client websites. I worked in house, and I did everything from website content to social to events to photography. I even tried my hand at video editing. From there, I think just the biggest traffic driver became organic search. So I was really interested in SEO. Eventually, I went to a big network agency to get trained up in all things kind of SEO marketing, how agencies worked, really fell in love with being an agency, that pace of life. TMWI was then the next step, just because it had so many things that you don't get at a network. It's an independent agency, it's a smaller team, so you get to know everyone, it's easy to integrate. It just gave me so much freedom. So I started out leading the content offering, and then took over the technical side of things, and then became the head of the SEO team. So yeah, it's been a trajectory starting from content and then discovering more that it's about strategy, keywords, and then really moving into a leadership role, which has been my life for the last couple of years, which is very different. Again, shifting out from doing so much SEO to actually, driving the team forward and coaching them to, run the SEO without me in a way. So yeah, it's been a journey so far.
How has it been actually having such career progression within the same company? I think you're actually in a unique
Yeah.
position to ask that question. Having so many roles within TMWI, how have they nurtured sort of that career progression internally?
I think, yeah, it's a really good question because, I've been with them 6.5 years, which is a crazy amount of time for an agency. But yeah, it's a really good atmosphere in terms of nurturing people to the next role. They gave me a lot of freedom to pursue the things that I liked, or follow up on new ideas, integration, building new parts to the team. I was given a lot of training and space and time for development, and I think every year when we went back through the appraisals and I had, I've ticked all my goals, I want to do all of these things next year, and the answer was always yes. So I mean, all staff would stay for that sort of support and freedom.
Awesome.
I think it's a really nice atmosphere.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I don't think you get that too much nowadays. That sort of freedom to go in and have fun and execute what you want. But yeah, one thing you said, obviously, you were talking about the transition from being heavily involved in the SEO to now more of leadership, leading the team and stuff like that. Did you notice any changes in your actual, not SEO ability, but your knowledge? Is it harder to keep up to date? Because obviously when you're in the trenches, you're seeing all the updates as they come through. You know what's happening on the websites, but when you're more focused on leading the team, is it almost like double jeopardy in a wee bit? Like you sort of lose a wee bit of knowledge. It's almost harder to lead the team because they're actually doing it every day.
I think it potentially could be. I think, if I'm honest, when I started out managing the team, I was not good at letting go. I'm sure if they were here, they'd be very honest and say that for a long time I was still doing the job instead of letting them get on with it. I think it is such a mindset shift, but I got a really good piece of advice from another leader who said to me, look, you're not meant to be the smartest person in the room. When you become a leader, your job is to coach, so you're very much on the bench. You're supposed to be setting everyone up for success, but then you let them play the game, and you don't need to know more about it than they do, because that's not your job anymore. They're supposed to be the experts, and you're just leading them in the right direction and coaching them to be the best that they can be. And I think that for me was a really big mindset shift of, I don't need to know everything about SEO anymore. Actually, and they'll tell you this, I can't use half of the reporting tools anymore because they change the interface, they update themselves, and they have to go and get me the numbers because I honestly don't know what I'm looking at anymore. So yeah, I think that's not a weakness. If you see that as actually that's part of your progress, then that's the right way to do it as a leader, I think.
Perfect. And how does it go from obviously leading on the SEO front, but leading on a personal level as well? how long did that sort of take to get used to like different ways of management? And was there any sort of like a style of management that you maybe had beforehand that you sort of incorporate into your way of doing it?
Yeah, for sure. I think it takes longer than you think. I think I probably was managing people for a couple of years before I felt like I was actually doing a good job at it. I struggled a lot with delegating. I struggled a lot with letting go of control, giving the team the freedom that I had so enjoyed, in my role. I struggled to pass that on because I knew the answer and I kept wanting to help with things. I think a big part of what I've been making changes for in the last couple of years, along with some mentoring that I've had, is focusing on communication styles, because it's those soft skills that are not just about, being able to effectively communicate your ideas and give them a direction, but also adapting to the different people that you have in your team and the way that they like to communicate. Sometimes I can be quite direct, and then other people in my team will maybe find that a bit much and they want something a bit, softer and a bit more. If I come in and ask them, where's this report? And I didn't start with, how was your weekend? How was your day? What's going on with you? That feels really negative to them. So yeah, I think that's been a big part of my progress, and the shift that I've made is to start focusing on how I'm adapting to the people in my team.
Yeah, actually, no, I think that's key. But no, I'm the same, almost too direct, and then harsh. But sorry, sure.
In talking about how you've been managing people and the soft skills that you've had to learn, how do you nurture that within, or practice nurturing that within your own team, should they build up to become a leader one day themselves? Do you practice that within the team and stuff?
Yeah, it's an absolutely great question, because I think, the sign of somebody who's a good leader is that they are making other leaders out of the people that they work with. So I think number one is about self-awareness. So we do things like communication style quizzes, personality quizzes. We offer management training as well, where that can be done, away from me. They can go and, sit in a room with someone and ask questions and get some advice, because I think you can't adapt your communication style until you know what it is. So yeah, when I did it, I was quite surprised to discover that my results came out as red and as blunt as they did. So you don't know that until someone tells you, I guess. So we really try to have a culture within the team of, the more you know about yourself and the more we know about each other, how we can shift our communication style to adapt to that, because it's the self-awareness, I think, that comes with leadership, because your energy and what you're bringing to the team so much influences, the motivation and how much happiness they have at work, that I think it's so important to be aware of what you're bringing to the room.
Definitely.
I love that so much, that you said, you have to be self-aware and know your own style of communication before adapting it to other people. I love that so much. Yeah, Darius?
Yeah, no, I was going to say, Emily, are you guys remote at the minute, or is it sort of like a hybrid model?
It is hybrid. We were obviously fully remote through the first couple of years of the pandemic, but it is hybrid now. So we did adapt a lot of our management techniques for hybrid, because it obviously it gives you less of that contact and less of that collaboration. So yeah, we've experienced both, and we're hopefully building something that's the best of both worlds. The team have the flexibility to be at home if they've got other things going on, or they've got like an Excel spreadsheet they want to spend hours getting their head into, but we've also got collaborative spaces in the office that people can come to and bounce ideas around and ask each other for advice. So yeah, hopefully the best of both worlds.
Perfect. And is there any sort of tweaks that you had to make for whenever you went from manage people remotely to sort of face-to-face?
It's a good question. I think as much as possible, we tried remotely or in person to be doing things either on a video call or when we can see each other, because I think, a big learning for me was that emails and messages and anything written down can easily have completely the wrong tone, not at all what you intended. So I think we try to, make sure that it's either in person or with cameras on for any kind of conversations and progress. So yeah, it's just an adjustment in making sure that people feel included. We try and do hybrid meetings. So sometimes we have a couple of people in the office and then a few people dialing in remotely, and we try to make sure that that's on the screen and everyone can see and hear each other properly. And then we also, we have conversation in the room, and then we keep taking it back to the virtual people who are there to make sure that they're contributing and being heard as well. So yeah, it's much more deliberate, I think, now.
Brilliant.
I just wanted to just continue back on that leadership topic. When you moved into your head of SEO role, was there any imposter syndrome that you faced, and how did you sort of approach that? And I guess for anyone that is going through something similar or going through a transition, is there any advice that you would give to them?
Yeah, for sure. I think throughout any of the roles that I've had, the initial period of getting the role, you do always have a bit of imposter syndrome. You wonder if you're the right person to do it. I think for me, a big help is remembering that everybody feels like that at some point. So it's not you. Everyone feels like that. It's just a big thing to remember. But I think to make the transition easier, one of the things I wish I had done, and that I would now do in any future role and give advice to anyone else who's going into management, is that you don't need to change anything or make your mark in the first few months. A lot of people, they go into those roles and they feel like, oh, that's so much pressure. Now I need to change things and I need to show results. And they go bulldozing in and end up actually, building up a bit of resentment or not getting people on board. And so now I would spend such a long time at the start of any new role just listening to the feedback that people had, just asking them why things are done that way, what do they like, what do they not like, and actually trying to get around to the root problems and the frustrations without trying to change anything at all, at least for the first few weeks.
Awesome. And also, just to build off of that, sorry, I'm like covering a lot of the leadership here, but just to build off of that, your previous experience prior to this was more in the tech side of things. How would you identify a personality that's made for moving into or progressing into a leadership role versus someone that is just going to be more specialist? Because generally people will think of a manager role or a higher level as in leading a team, whereas that's not actually always the end all be all. There can be a specialist that can just run their own show. What advice would you give to, I guess, both those types of personalities?
I think it's a really great question, and one that, especially in SEO, can come up because I think the more that people know about SEO, it's very technical, it's very complex, and so the more complex it gets, they feel like the progress is then naturally to lead other people. But I think it's one of the first things you have to accept about leadership is that you will do less and less of the thing that you specialized in. Like I do so much less SEO now. I can go a whole week and do like 2 small things on SEO. Like I have a team who do that, and that's not my role anymore. So I think, first of all, the person can see that and can accept that. If they love SEO so much they want to stay in it and they want to specialize in it, then maybe managing a team isn't for them. Then we look at some other kind of specialist role, some place that they own an area of SEO, for example. They could become a technical manager and own all of the things that are technical. But I think the soft skills as well. For me, when I think about who I've worked with in the past, who I thought, this person is going to make a great leader one day, they're people who are really thinking about how their ideas affect others. They're really thinking about how to build on things. They're really open to feedback and able to implement that. I think people who are positive about feedback and take it on board, that's a really solid sign that they'll, have those kind of softer communication skills that are suitable for leaders.
Awesome. Cool.
And yeah, Emily, just to go back to the experience as well. I know at the start you mentioned that you initially started off in like journalism and stuff like that. Obviously, working with language and stuff like that helps with knowledge of like on page and things like that. Yeah. But did that ever lead to going into like a bit of like a digital PR? Did that help with approaching journalism, or do you use just like an external agency that focus on it?
It's a good question. I think when we set up a digital PR part for TMWI, we set up an offering. It was actually a project that I gave to a person in my team who was a manager level, and they wanted, to own a department and build something. And so we decided to set that up very much going through the process start to finish in terms of, what are competitors doing, what do we have experience of, who can we lean on. So it's something we built in-house, but we used as much kind of external information as we could to be able to make sure that that was industry standard and had all of that structure and process in place. So I think we decided we'd build it in-house. The person who set that up very much had a background in, they originally worked in a PR agency and then decided SEO was more for them. So we relied more on that experience really than my very brief time as a journalist.
Okay, brilliant. And yeah, going from, obviously, I think it was McCann previously, which is like a very large sort of agency or network, to obviously still TMI, which is still quite a big team, I think around sort of 35 at the minute. Was there like a noticeable change in sort of the way it worked or certain processes, and is there anything you enjoy more now than you did previously, or something that you would like to introduce from McCann into TWMI?
Yeah, I think so. It was definitely a culture shock to go from, an office with 350 people to an office with 35 people. You very quickly learn everyone's names. But I really liked the smaller size meant that it was faster to move on things. You could build things more quickly. So, you didn't have to fill in paperwork to get access to another team and wait for them to be available. I could just go and sit down next to them on their desk and say, hey, I've got a question. I've got an idea. So I think that, freedom was huge for me. So yeah, it's always a bit of a transition when you change kind of atmosphere. I think, agency to client side or big agency to small agency, there definitely changes. But the thing that I would love to add in is tricky to say. I really like independent agencies. They have, all of the freedom and less of the paperwork, and you get to talk to the people in charge of things and you get to learn from them and mentorship from them, which I just think is so important. I didn't want to be one person that was just among a huge company. It's been much better for my career, I think, to have access to all different kinds of people, but on a very, personal one-to-one basis.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, I didn't think there'd be much to sort of follow up on, to be honest, but yeah, no, it's excellent.
We actually had on someone a few weeks ago, and we asked this question about personality types in terms of how someone would end up in-house versus someone that would end up at an agency. How are you finding that experience at the moment, and how would you sort of identify different personalities that would fit better at an agency versus in-house?
It's such a good question, especially for recruitment, because it's a big part of when we interview for roles for an agency, it's a big part of what we're trying to make sure that the person would be a good fit for agencies. I think they're exciting environments. It's got to be somebody who thrives on, a bit of pressure and lots of change and not having clear rules. It's got to be somebody who, will fit with that very heightened environment and find that gives them energy. And I think it's not a case of whether or not they're good at time management or whether or not they are organized or whatever. It's more about, do stressful environments give them energy and excitement, or do they drain their energy? Because that's how I would want to see it. It's not necessarily that people who don't fit with agencies are not organized or that they work too slowly. It's just about, if that excites and enthuses you, then that is going to be the right environment. And if not, agencies probably aren't going to work because they'll always feel dramatic to someone who doesn't thrive on that.
I love that. How do you sort of test for that in your hiring processes? Is that through your quizzes that you guys do and stuff in the first stages?
Yeah, we definitely ask it as a question, and we look, if people have had a lot of client-side experience, I think I would need them to demonstrate in the interview that they would thrive on that environment, or that would be a fit for them, because it would sorry, that's my phone going off.
Would important client or something.
Perfect. Yeah, that would be a concern for us, I think. It's always a good transition for people if they're ready for that, if they've found that client side can be frustrating, or with a brand can be frustrating. But also there are some brands that are just quite dramatic. I mean, my first job was client side, but it was very, very chaotic. It was a small team. It was multiple events a year. It definitely wasn't a slow pace. So yeah, I think I try and give people the option and make a judgment on, you know, what seems to excite them and what they seem enthusiastic about in the interview.
Awesome.
And
Darius, I know you have
Sorry.
one more question. I just want to sneak in one last question. Sorry, just before we move on to it. In terms of onboarding from your previous company, which was such a large agency, to TMWI, was there like a stark sort of like, were there any like stark differences between the two onboarding processes, and how has it sort of like inspired you moving forward when you're bringing on new team members to your side? Sorry,
Yes.
Darius.
I think it's a great question as well. So I don't think they'll be cross at me for saying this. There was not an onboarding process really for TMWI. It was not a formal process at all. So yeah, we definitely have a lot better now. We got a proper HR manager on board, and a lot of this process has been put in place so that now there's, you know, a proper induction set up. There's a checklist that people have to do. There's a buddy system. So there's a lot that I would have, you know, added for an SEO team that I would have brought from my bigger agency experience. But we've also been adding a lot of those more formal processes, because actually it's those first few weeks, if they feel, you know, disorganized or stressful, that's where you can really lose staff. So yeah, it's something we've definitely started doing a lot better, because I think there was definitely not anything in place when I joined. So it was a lot of me going around and poking people and asking questions. So
yeah, which isn't a bad way to do it. I find out a lot. But in terms of the hiring that you were talking about, was there a difference, or did you find it difficult when you went to the hybrid model, that okay, the talent pool's got a lot smaller now, and how did you sort of approach that and tackle it?
I think, if I'm honest, the hybrid working did free up some more options for us. So TMWI is in a really odd place. It's actually in Stratford-upon-Avon, so basically the middle of the Midlands, but it's a long way from anything. We've got staff come in from Redditch and Worcester and Coventry and Rugby and Birmingham. I mean, there's loads of places that they can commute, but it is a long commute for some people. So the hybrid model really opened up a lot more candidates for us, rather than having 5 days a week driving to, you know, this quite small town just off the M40. So yeah, I think that in a way has really benefited us. I think if we were a central London agency, that would be a very different matter, because obviously candidates don't want to be commuting into that all the time. But yeah, in a way, the hybrid has been really beneficial for us, because candidates can now be further away, and if they've only got to make that commute 2 days a week, that's much more doable than 5 days a week.
Yeah, big time, big time. And going back through the experience, obviously you were heavily content focused. I think you were content marketing manager before you moved into like SEO manager. What was it like moving from purely focusing on obviously the content side of things to obviously now becoming an all-rounder, and people maybe come and asking you for advice on more sort of technical questions? How did you sort of adapt, and what was like the sort of the early stages like?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think I probably struggled with it a little bit at first, until I got the advice about, you know, not having to have all the answers at the time. You know, sometimes your job is just to say, oh, I actually don't know, I've never come across that before. Leave it with me, I'll go investigate and come back. So I think the ability to just say, I don't know, I will find the answer and let you know, has been really powerful, because it is, you know, when people start asking you technical SEO questions about JavaScript and you think, oh, I sort of vaguely know, but I'm going to need to go away and like run a different crawl and check that it's, you know, rendering properly. That was definitely tough. But I think I just ended up being given permission by my manager to just say, I don't know, I will investigate, I'll get back to you. And I think there's such a lot of confidence in that, instead of trying to fluff and bluff your way through answering a question where you're not really sure.
And I think it probably makes the team member, like the juniors, more at ease as well. Like, okay, like even, you know, my boss doesn't know everything, so it takes a wee bit of pressure off them if they don't know something like that as well.
Yeah, and I think we try and have a very challenger-friendly vibe in the SEO team where the team can feel free to question the things that I say if they have different experience. They're very much, we're open to feedback. They can make changes to documents. They can, add new things or take things out if they think they're not relevant. So yeah, they increasingly do, overrule me on things. So these days on calls, or if I get asked, I throw the question out to the team. They're far more of the experts than me. So yeah, it works for you in a good way when you give, your team the space and the confidence to just start answering questions and finding these things out for themselves, because they run it and they can teach you about it, and that becomes positive for everyone.
Excellent.
I think it was, I'm ballparking here. I think it was Bill Gates that said, hire your team that's smarter than you as you build up. I think it's Bill Gates. Someone important said that. I have a bit of a putting you in the hot seat sort of question, and this is for, I guess, SEOs that are currently in the job market right now, in the state that it's in. Considering the state that the job market is in right now, how would you, as head of SEO, say if you were going out to apply to a job now, how would you sort of approach tackling that and making sure that you're standing out to the clients or the companies that you want to work with?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think, in my 9-10 years in the industry, I've never seen it this tough before.
Yeah.
I would say don't spray out applications in all directions. I know how tempting it is, but you're better off spending the time on roles that you think are a good fit and that you have a good chance for than I would. I'm not really a big fan of cover letters, but I think I would tailor the CV to what the role requirements are and really think about how my experience is showing results rather than just outputs. It's not, I did a technical audit, but it's actually, we removed this many errors and the site speed increased the conversion value. It's got to have, actual business results on the end of it. So where you can show that, make sure you're doing that. And then I would also, I'm a big fan of following up with the hiring manager on LinkedIn. It does happen to us sometimes, and I'm always more than happy. Sometimes people even call up the office and say, hey, I've sent an application. I just want to check that you've received it and see if there's any more information you need. It's never a bad thing to seem keen. So yeah, I would be really tailoring it, making sure that I'm following up. And then if there is an interview and it's not successful, then actually asking, any specific examples of feedback. We do try, if we've interviewed someone and then we decide to go with another candidate, we do try and provide feedback. Because it just sometimes can be the difference for the next role. So yeah, it's a tough market out there, but I think try and be smart rather than, scattering out applications in all directions and hoping.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And what I like to see is whenever people have a bit more of like an interactive CV. So like you said, they talk about business results, but they don't just say that and then, claim that that's it and nobody looks into it. They have like it hyperlinked and then it goes into like a Google Doc with like a wee mini case study about like the client, the site, the issues and stuff like that. That I think really helps people stand out. And what is it that you would look for in, say, somebody like a senior exec level? Is there anything on particular on a CV that really stands out to you?
Yeah, I think we're looking for somebody who understands how to do SEO, but also how to communicate that. So one of the things because we're an independent agency, we don't have things like loads of checklists or tick boxy things. A lot of it is about investigation. So I would really want to see somebody who had experience, digging about in a site, asking questions, presenting that to clients, even if it's just on a call or, a screen share or something like that. Anybody that has that like client-facing experience and can distill SEO insights into something that a marketing manager would understand would be really important. But really, the one thing that tips it in the favor for me is, are they enthusiastic about it in the interview? Are they asking questions? Are they bringing a great energy to it? Because I want somebody who is going to fit in with the team and build on the products that we have and take the clients that we have and, deliver great work for them. And for that, it's got to be somebody who says, oh, what a great opportunity. I'd love to get started in this. And if I don't feel that vibe in the interview, I think sometimes that's really what swings it for me.
Awesome.
Right. Yeah, couldn't agree more.
One last question, as we're about to round it up. I think a hot topic at the moment as well now, just on the flip side of the state of the job market, is employee retention and how to sort of keep your employees and keep them happy. How do you sort of approach that as a head of SEO and sort of practice it within the team that you currently looking over?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think as much as possible, we have all of the standard processes in place. We have regular one-to-ones and appraisals. We are part of the IPA, so there's that continuous development. There's the minimum requirement of hours as well that people have to hit. So there's constant training and development. We work to also define what areas do people enjoy outside of their current role. What else would they like to pursue? We constantly think about what does the next role look like, so people can measure and see that progress. So yeah, more than happy to take feedback as well if there's things people want to change. I'm very clear with my team that it's their department, their project, and I'm simply going to help them implement what it is that they want to do. So I hope that freedom is really important. But the other side of it is that if people do decide to leave, then that's not personal. That is the right choice for them. That's the right choice for their family, for whatever it is that they're doing with their career. That's something we're incredibly proud of, that we've had this work from them. They've put so much effort and dedication into it, and they're now off to a new opportunity. I think seeing that as a positive, that they're now ready for the next step, and we give people a great send off and make sure that they know that their work was appreciated and that we wish them the best, I think is also really important, because you are always going to get churn. Sometimes your job as a leader is to help people realize that this is not the job they want to be doing, and then you've set them up for that. That's actually a success. So yeah, as much as possible, we're trying to make sure they want to stay, but if they don't, I would much rather have people who really want to be there and say goodbye to the people who want to move on.
I love that. That's such a positive outlook on both cases, both sides of it. Yeah, but Emily, that wraps us up. Thank you so much. That was such an insightful webinar. It honestly flew by. But yeah, we will be uploading this to YouTube, sending out a newsletter and everything like that. So we'll be seeing you around. And yeah, all the best at TMWI. We hope to chat soon.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for having me.
Cheers, Emily. Thank you.
Bye.